and the great honor of recording this song with the legendary Mavis Staples, who celebrates this year her 85th year on planet Earth down here with us. I think we're all very, very lucky to have her. I wrote this song to kind of remind myself of the small things that we do every single day, the small gestures that we make to the people around us, and the way that we show up for the people around us, and the lasting impacts that those sometimes have, you know. Oftentimes beyond what we think they might do for people. And also to remind myself of the legacy of protest and everything that we have to be thankful for. You know, everything that we take for granted, that once upon a time had to be fought very, very hard for by people making a decision of conscience and pushing towards the goal with collective action or direct action, you know. When I talk about those things that have lasting impacts, one huge thing is that, as you know, Mavis Staples and her family, the Staples singers, her brothers and sisters, and her father, Pop Staples, they used to sing before speeches during the American Civil Rights Movement here in the 1960s. And why that was of some particular interest to me as an Irishman is that civil rights movement directly inspired and directly impacted the civil rights movement that happened in Northern Ireland very, very shortly after. Directly inspired. At a time and place in Northern Ireland where not every citizen had the guaranteed right to vote. And I think genuinely, in the small ways that we show up for each other, for our kids, we show up for our brothers and sisters, we show up for our parents, our neighbours, our community, and we see what they're going through, or we see that the lives that they've lived, and we just bear honest human witness to that. And every single day of our lives we show up for people and we say, hey, I'm here I am, I see what you're going through, and I love you, I'm not going to abandon you in that. And I think when everybody does that at the same time, in the same place, I genuinely believe in no high concept, no complicated way, no lofty, airy-fairy way. I genuinely think that changes history, that changes the world forever. And I think that's what happened when everybody in our collective societies decided that it's only right, that everybody should have the unalienable right to vote, you know? And that was something that had to be fought for. Or that women should have the right to vote, something that we take for granted. That took so long. Women fought tooth and nail for, you know. Or that in our collective societies, everybody recognized maybe something that was abstract became real when it affected a loved one, it affected somebody's kid, it affected somebody's family member. And in the same way that our collective societies decided, you know what, we would want women to have full control over their reproductive systems. You know? That's something my society only handed over in 2018. 4 years ago. And these things we take for granted, but it's within living memory that women weren't able to open a bank account without a male guardian signature. That is within living memory, and it's much forgotten about. Or in the same way that our collective societies recognize maybe the human experience of our neighbours and said, we would want our LGBTQ plus siblings to have the same rights as us. It's so simple. Or in the 1980s, there was a lot of student protests, a lot of divestment protests, and people recognized they saw what was happening in apartheid South Africa. They said, well, that system is wrong. I'm not going to buy products that are profiteering directly off apartheid. And people withdrew investment out of apartheid South Africa at the time. Very, very quickly, apartheid South Africa was no longer an apartheid state, you know. And I know there's a lot of protests in the news recently, a lot of student protests. I like it, like so many peace movements and movements of conscience, it's very, very often students who drive them. People who have the longest time to inherit in our collective countries, you know, the longest life ahead of them. And in the same way that there's students here, in that same compassion and that same empathy, people all over the world reaching out to their democratic representation and saying we want to be represented in that compassion and represented in that empathy, represented in that human witness. And we wouldn't want to see the type of violence that we're seeing on our TV screens. We wouldn't want to see, it doesn't matter where you're coming from. We wouldn't want to see anybody subject to any kind of hatred, any Islamophobia, or any anti-Semitism. But we sure as hell would want to see peace and security and safety for anybody in the Middle East, anybody in that region. Well, that includes seeing a Palestine free from violence, a Palestine free from occupation, and free to pursue meaningful self-determination and statehood. And that's something that my people in Ireland asked for 100 years ago, you know? And I know, like, I'd repeat what Alison said earlier on about the violence that we've seen in the last few days in particular is so fucking distressing. The onslaught that Palestinians are facing in Rafah is beyond anything I have ever seen in my life, and I think anybody here would ever see in their lifetimes, you know? And it's a kind of genocidal violence that really cannot continue. And I would ask you, if you feel moved to move out to reach out to your representatives, your democratic representatives, and say you would want to be represented in your compassion and in your empathy, and you wouldn't want to see, but that's not happening in your name, you know, because I know it's not. But these things, these small ways that people show up for each other, these things are powerful. And that's what this song was about. And there was an Irish revolutionary by the name of James Connolly. He just once wrote that no revolution is ever complete without its poetical expression. Without its poetical expression. And to me, Mavis Staples always embodied the poetical expression of a revolution of love, and kindness, and human witness, honest human witness. And I'm blessed to be sharing this tour with Alison Russell, and she does the very, very same. It's a revolution of radical inclusion and love and kindness. You know, these things are powerful. You know? It's not the waking, it's the rise.